Hey guys, June here, and welcome to my guide video on the Legions of the Order of Ascension. This is a group of 6 bosses that are particularly interesting in my opinion, and the reason I say that is that they're not very challenging once you understand the strategy. If you're not familiar with how they work, you can expect to die in seconds when you enter the fight, but if you know how they work, you can reliably kill them with really low level gear. You don't need overloads for these bosses, you don't need curses. Obviously all that stuff's going to help you and it's going to speed your kill times up, but this is a great boss for really low level PVMers to start at to make some money. For example, if they don't have tier 90 gear and they want to try and save up for that stuff, this can be a great place to start there. So I'm going to cover all of the mechanics and all of the strategies that I've developed for the 6 of them in hunting my pets, and I think they're pretty darn good strategies and they should definitely set you guys up just fine. I'm not going to spend too long on the setup because, like I said, the gear is not very important. This is actually a really great place to use Sirenic once you become more skilled. The primary attack that the bosses all use is avoidable, and the Sirenic armor degrades based on how many times you're struck, so it won't degrade really at all. However, while you're brand new to this, you may want to switch for a non-degradable armor, because even with, like, if you have just a little bit of lag or if you make small mistakes, you can expect to die pretty frequently, so you may want to use something that's not going to cost you on deaths until you're a little bit more skilled with it. That's the same reason that I have a Sign of Life. And also, one of the things that I find particularly useful, especially when you're getting, when you're brand new to the bosses and you're doing your first few kills, are Portents of Restoration. These will automatically trigger and heal you by the set amount when you hit 50% HP. So if you have a small amount of lag or if you make a mistake, these can help you skirt death and prevent the costliness of that. Other than that, I've got overloads because I have them. I've got 2 prayer potions and 10 keystones. This is enough to get me 10 kills of whatever boss, and then I have the cavefish. Some of the bosses, particularly Quintus, I actually take a few less keystones and a few more food because they're dangerous, and Tertius and Sextus, for example, I take a few extra prayer potions because they're a little bit longer to kill. Other than that, your setup, pretty much you just want to pick your best DPS stuff for ranged, and like I said, avoid anything degradable for armor when you're new. So let's get started on the actual mechanics of the boss.
The first mechanic is shared by all 6 bosses, and it is essentially a damage reduction passive effect based on your proximity to the boss. So the only way to deal 100% damage is to actually be standing directly underneath the boss, and you can test this yourself using Fragmentation Shot. But for every space away from the boss that you're standing, you have 10% of the base damage of that attack reduced down to, I believe, 50% is the lowest that it can be dealt. So when you're fighting the bosses, you generally want to stay as close as possible, though because of their attack method, this can be a little bit difficult and involves a little bit of strategy. The primary method of attack that the legions use is this lightning bomb attack that targets a tile on the floor depending on where the player was standing when the legion fired it. After a brief period, the bombs will detonate and open into a 5x5 area, and the player will sustain damage over time every game tick if they stand within the area of the bomb. If they are standing directly on the tile that the bomb was targeted at initially, they take up to 2,500 damage per tick, while on the outskirts they'll only take about 1,100, and each bomb is capable of hitting the player 3 times before dissipating, with the exception of Sextus, whose bombs last considerably longer. This is the primary source of damage with the legions, and avoiding this is the key to being effective and successful at these bosses. The only other method of attack that the legions have is a basic magic attack, which is not blockable in any way, but deals negligible damage and can effectively be ignored. Taking both the damage reduction effect and the necessity of avoiding the bombs into consideration, the best strategy for dealing with the legions is to run in a controlled fashion around them, trying to minimize your distance from the legion at all times, but also firing abilities manually with your left hand as you continue to move. For all of them excluding Sextus, which I will deal with in a particular fashion later on, The best pattern for doing this is the square that I've labeled on screen. If we assume that the red tile is the tile where the Legion is standing, you want to run between each of the yellow tiles that serve as the vertices of this square and fire a single ability at each of these. They're perfectly spaced apart so that there's no wasted time between ability cooldowns, but also spaced distantly enough that a bomb centered on any of the vertices is not large enough to deal damage to a player standing on any of the other vertices. This basic strategy is the key to killing them effectively and can be mastered with just a little bit of practice. In addition to each of the mechanics I've covered so far, each Legion has a unique effect which will trigger for them at 75%, 50%, and 25% HP, which I will cover individually for them later on in the video in their designated segments. The last trick that will come in handy on each of these bosses for those of you who have unlocked the ability Devotion. Generally, their lightning bomb special attack isn't affected by the protect or deflect from magic prayers. However, in combination with Devotion, the damage is still reduced to 1. So, using Devotion in combination with prayer is a great opportunity for you to stand right next to the Legion and minimize the damage reduction, as well as use a channeled ability like Rapid Fire to deplete almost all of their HP in one shot. This can be great if you're struggling, and there's also a couple of special uses for it that I'll talk about in the individual segments for the Legions later on. Primus, the first of the Legions, has the honor of being the most expensive keystone as well as probably tied for the easiest of the Legions to kill. The special effect that he has, which triggers at 75, 50, and 25% HP, is just a small damage buff. At the highest, he deals 50% more damage than the base damage from the Legions. However, since you're running around in a pattern and avoiding all of the hits anyway, it makes absolutely no difference, and this fight should be over with quickly and easily. Secundus is appropriately our second candidate for the easiest Legion. The special effect that he has, which triggers at the 3 stages of life point depletion, is that he will start to prioritize his lightning bomb special attack instead of the standard magic attack. Now, since the standard attack is negligible and you are avoiding the lightning bombs in the prescribed manner I talked about earlier on, this should be of no consequence to you, and the fight will be over in no time. Tertius is the first of the Legions that people generally have a little bit of trouble with, but most of that comes from a misunderstanding of some of the mechanics. At each of the 3 stages of life point depletion, he's going to summon some other mobs from the Order of Ascension. At the first stage, that's a group of 3 Rorarius, which can essentially be ignored. They deal a little bit of damage, but nothing that's going to influence the fight in a major way. However, at the second stage, he summons a Gladius, and this is generally where people freak out. They know that Gladius can stun, and that is a recipe for disaster with the combination of the stun and the lightning bombs. However, the curious mechanic is that if you don't directly engage with the Gladius, it doesn't stun you. So stop using multi-hitting abilities like Bombardment and Ricochet, and you can essentially ignore the Gladius for the time being. At the final stage of life point depletion, he summons a Capsarius, and the Capsarius will both heal him and reduce the damage able to be dealt to him by 90% while it's alive. This is a great opportunity for you to use Devotion and focus on Capsarius alone. When you defeat Capsarius, which only has about 3,000 life points, you will extend the Devotion timer by 5 seconds, and then you can use the remaining Devotion time to finish off Tertius with Rapid Fire, and once he's dead, you can deal with the Gladius and Rorarius before taking on the next kill. Quartus is not especially challenging, however his special attack can be a little bit disorienting. At each of the 3 trigger points, he will teleport you into melee distance from whatever direction you happen to be running at that time, and a moment after that he will drop a lightning bomb on you. The main issue that I find with this special attack is that sometimes if you're running in a particular direction, he will throw a bomb and then he'll teleport you backward, and you end up running through a bomb that he threw previously, and all sorts of weird synchronization issues. So just take it a little slow, and don't be afraid to give him a little bit more space than the pattern that I suggested running at the beginning, and you shouldn't have too much trouble. And so we come to Quintus, which is indisputably the most difficult of the 6 bosses. The special attack that Quintus uses is to conjure these lines of Ascension,
At each of the 3 trigger points, he will conjure a line that crosses the room. The first line travels from east to west, the second travels north to south, and the third travels east to west again. And they will linger for the remainder of the fight, and any time you're standing on them, you'll receive 2,000 to 2,500 damage per game tick. This triggers immediately, so when you hit each of the trigger points, you want to be running in a direction perpendicular to the lines to prevent that first hit, and then once they are spawned, you can avoid further damage from them when crossing over by abusing the run mechanics a little bit. The way running works in RuneScape is that it essentially skips every second game tile. So if you stand directly adjacent to the line before running over it, you essentially skip the tile that the line crosses and avoid the damage. This is also an especially important place to have devotion, especially if you don't have quick thinking skills and good hand-eye coordination. It can save you a lot of hassle, and you definitely want to bring more food for this one. It's definitely the suckiest and the most damaging of the bosses, but with a little practice, you'll be able to do it reliably too. And finally, we come to Sextus, and after Quintus, he's refreshingly easy. The special effects that Sextus has are that the lightning bombs he throws are slightly larger than the other legions, as well as having a significantly longer duration, and he will also exclusively throw lightning bombs. He has no standard magic attack. So to compensate for the larger size and longer duration, we've had to adjust the size of the run pattern from the strategy I outlined at the beginning. The hexagon pattern that I prefer is laid out on screen now. Down here at the bottom of the screenshot, you can see I've actually marked 2 blue tiles, and the reason that I've done this is that Sextus spawns at the red tile, and taking the blue tile directly adjacent to that is actually the mathematically best way to go about this. However, the click radius on Sextus is a little larger than it should be, and you do risk misclicking on him and lingering a little bit too long on the yellow tile, and lingering on the yellow tile is risky. You end up tanking a lightning bomb. So if you feel uncomfortable with that, feel free to take the more distant blue tile. You're not going to compromise your damage by more than a few percent, but I've laid it out this way just in case you're a tryhard and you want to get the perfect strategy. With these small changes made to our click pattern and a little bit of practice, we should be able to take Sextus down with exactly the same strategy that we've used for the other legions. Due to the new increased size of the pattern that we run in, we're a little bit farther from Sextus at each of the points where we fire an ability, and thus our damage is reduced a little bit more by their passive effect, and our kill is going to take a little bit longer, so it's worth bringing an extra prayer potion or 2 for Sextus kills. However, we should be able to kill him in a comfortable time still. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope it was helpful for you. As you can see, I killed a ridiculous amount of these things hunting the pets. I made a ton of crossbows along the way, and I made probably somewhere around 1 billion GP just on the crossbows and drops. But as you can see, I've got them all, and I hope that this video is going to be helpful for you guys if you're hunting them, or if you just need to make some money or some crossbows for yourself. So I wish you good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.